What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure you follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today we have to take a quick moment to discuss J.D. Vance's recent interview on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. Now, why do I want to discuss this today? I want to discuss this today because Margaret Brennan asked J.D. Vance some of the most ridiculous questions that you will ever hear asked in an interview to a vice president of the United States. And when she's asking this question, there's so much sassiness in it. She's cackling and laughing. And you can tell that her whole goal and objective is just to try to get JD Vance in some sort of a gotcha moment. And that's fine. If your goal is just to get JD Vance in a gotcha moment and to defend the Democrat Party at all costs, then by all means do that. But let's not pretend that you're fair and balanced and that these DNC mainstream media networks are fair and balanced networks, just giving us the straight facts and giving us the news. That's something that I just utterly despise, is how they carry themselves in that way, despite the obvious. But let's get into this first question here, right? This question here that we're going to get into is her speaking to JD Vance about the price of groceries and how come the price of groceries hasn't dropped yet. It's completely ridiculous. And then watch out for the cackling that comes along with it. It's just nonsensical.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret.
You see, so grocery prices aren't going to come down. What's the cackling about? And really think about the absurdness of the question. Let's let this sit on your mind for a minute. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have been in office for a total of 6 days. 6 days. They've only been in office 6 days. How are you asking me, cackling about why aren't the price of groceries going down yet? We literally just got here. And what they expect is for Trump and Vance to undo 4 years of carnage that was given to us by Biden and Harris in 6 days. How ridiculous and nonsensical is this? But this is the DNC mainstream media press for you. This is what they do, and this is how they are. Everything is about getting you in the gotcha moment, as opposed to actually allowing time for executive orders to go into action, for other moves by way of Congress and legislation to get put in place and passed. Let's see how this stuff actually works out. And if prices aren't getting lowered after said period of time, because legislation has been in motion and law has been passed for quite some time now, but we're seeing that prices aren't going down. Now, this is a fair question to ask. But 6 days in, and you're already asking me something this ridiculous? Come on, man. I mean, this is just stupid and ridiculous at this point. And she carries on with this too. She doesn't let it go, despite the fact that Vance will answer these questions masterfully, as he typically does. But watch this right here as she carries on with the laughter about the price of groceries not going down.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And while we've done a whole lot, we can't undo all of the damage of Joe Biden's presidency in 4 days.
Well, there are a lot of things that contributed to higher energy prices, and there was record oil and gas production.
Yes, Joe Biden did many terrible things to lead to an increase in prices. I agree, Margaret.
No, but all the things you experience at the grocery store are what people touch and feel. That's what you were talking about, bacon on the campaign trail.
Of course, of course.
Those things. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel is way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers. And that is what we're trying to fight for.
Well,
once again, I can't stress enough, and JD Vance always does a good job when it comes to this kind of foolishness, but I just can't stress enough how idiotic these questions are. Well, you ran on bacon and you talked about the price of bacon. How come the price of bacon isn't going down yet? Are you serious? Once again, 6 days in. But I don't want to belabor the point, because what I want to do next is that I want to move over to when she brought up mass deportation. Now, many of you all, if you've been subscribed to this channel for quite some time now, if you knew me throughout the Biden administration, essentially you could call me Mr. Migrant Crisis. Now that we have Trump in office, you can most definitely call me Mr. Mass Deportation. And anytime the subjects of this matter come up, I'm going to speak on it. And what I want to speak on now is when she starts asking JD Vance nonsensical questions about ICE agents going into schools and going into hospitals to pick up illegal immigrant criminals. Just look at this question here, how ridiculous it is. Watch how JD Vance answers the question, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit more.
Let me ask you about another area that you campaigned on quite a lot, and there was a flurry of activity on, and that has to do with immigration.
Sure.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line?
Boom. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. These Catholic organizations and NGOs overall, nonprofits overall, have received hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the entirety of Biden's and Harris's migrant crisis. They've received so much money, it's ridiculous. And I think a thorough investigation needs to be had into all of these organizations to find out what exactly did you do with all this money. Are you spending it on what you say you're going to spend it on, or are you pocketing it and putting it all in your personal bank accounts and making your wallets grow fatter? That's what we need to figure out. And that's what I'm interested in hoping. And that's what I'm interested in these investigations uncovering, if they go into all this, which I believe they will, because I think I remember hearing, throughout the campaign trail and things of that nature, even after the fact, that they're going to investigate the migrant crisis and find out what's going on with all this money that's been given to NGOs, right? And these Catholic organizations, so-called Catholic organizations, as far as I'm concerned, when they're doling out money to third-party companies to help assist them with their so-called cause, who owns these third-party companies that you're giving out money to, right? Who's actually running these organizations? And is there some sort of conflict of interest? The American people need to know and figure out what's actually going on with this, because ultimately, at the end of the day, like JD Vance said, these people are just concerned with the bottom line. They just want the flow of money to keep coming in. That's the only thing that they're concerned about.
We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support
about
them going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
Exactly. What is the point of your question? How come when it comes to illegal immigrants, they have more rights than American citizens as it pertains to protection from the federal government? You're telling me that, God forbid, an MS-13 gang member, a Terrain de Aragua gang member, a cartel member that's in the middle of parent-teacher conference, God forbid he's in the middle of parent-teacher conference. You're telling me that ICE doesn't have a responsibility to go in there? Immigration officials don't have a responsibility to go into the school or a church or a hospital to go get them? Now, if you flip the script and they're not MS-13 members or any type of illegal immigrant at all that have committed a crime, but if it's an American citizen like you and me, oh no, go in that school and go get him. If it's TD, go get TD in that school. If TD's in the middle of a church service, go get him in the middle of that church service. If I'm at the hospital because maybe something happened to my mother and father, and I'm sitting at the hospital bed next to my parents, by all means, go into that hospital and go get TD. Who cares what's going on with his parents and that he's by their side at a hospital bed? But when it comes to illegal immigrants, particularly those that are committing crime, oh my God, he's in a parent-teacher conference right now, so we can't go in there and interrupt them. And I wouldn't be surprised if the teachers in these sanctuary city schools tip the illegal immigrant off to help him go out the back door. These people are lunatics. So now what I want to do in closing is that I want to address the question that Margaret asked J.D. Vance about his support of ending birthright citizenship. I want to get into that right now. Now, when she questions him about it, and obviously she doesn't want it to end because she's a Democrat, but when she questions him about it, he does a great job answering the question as it pertains to his support behind ending birthright citizenship. But then he delivers an answer that really made me chuckle when she pressed the issue surrounding it. And she tried to use the talking point of, this is a nation of immigrants and this is a nation that was built by immigrants. And just take a moment to listen to what J.D. Vance had to say as he shut that down.
Oh, well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country
This is a
founded
unique
by
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first. And that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
That was such a great answer to the question. This doesn't mean that 250 years later, we have to have the dumbest immigration policies ever, right? And that's not to mention the fact and the reality that when you're talking about the 14th Amendment, which essentially is the amendment that establishes birthright citizenship, this is something that is extremely outdated and is rooted in the legacy of slavery and ensuring the rights of citizenship to newly freed slaves that are birthing children. That's what that was about. It wasn't about illegal immigration or immigration, laws overall. That's not what the 14th Amendment was about. The 14th Amendment, and as a matter of fact, I'm just going to read it to you. So, better than me, going off the top of my head, I'll just pull this up for you right now. So let's get into this right now. And as you can see here, this is from, Senate.gov, United States Senate, Senate.gov, passed by the Senate on June 8th of 1866 and ratified 2 years later on July 9th, 1868. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and provided all citizens with equal protection under the laws, extending the provisions of the Bill of Rights to the states. The amendment authorized the government to punish states that abridged citizens' right to vote by proportionally reducing their representation in Congress. It banned those who engage in insurrection against the United States from holding any civil, military, or elected office without the approval of 2/3 of the House and the Senate. The amendment prohibited former Confederate states from repaying, let's start that over again because this part is really important. The amendment prohibited former Confederate states from repaying war debts and compensating former slave owners for the emancipation of their enslaved people. Finally, it granted Congress the power to enforce this amendment, a provision that led to the passage of other landmark legislation in the 20th century, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Congress required former Confederate states to ratify the 14th Amendment as a condition of regaining federal representation. This entire 14th Amendment is literally rooted in ensuring the citizenship of newly freed slaves, and particularly their children that are being born. That's what this is rooted in. We are far removed from this point in time, yet this is still on the books as law, to which you have people grossly abusing the 14th Amendment, coming into the country illegally and having a child and using the 14th Amendment as some sort of get out of jail free pass because I have a child that's a citizen, so therefore you can't deport me because that would be family separation. This is a gross bastardization of what the 14th Amendment was originally put in place for. And I'll leave that there. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video out on your social media platforms. And also don't forget to follow me on Telegram and Rumble at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram and Rumble is in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. Until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.